Hello and welcome to the Fringe Guide to Doing a Show Live. My name's Barry Church-Woods. I'm the Venues and Companies Manager for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, which is a registered charity based in Edinburgh. And we are charged with, I guess, the safeguarding and the looking after the Edinburgh Festival Fringe as a whole and supporting people who want to take part and ensuring its successful facilitation. This panel discussion, or this chat, will last for 60 minutes. For the live section of this, we are gathering questions from people who are watching at home via the Ask Ed Fringe hashtag on Facebook or Twitter. So if you do have a question you would like any of our guests to answer, then please do submit them now or throughout the discussion. If you're not sure if you're watching it live, try to fast forward the clip. If it doesn't fast forward, you can still submit. Okay, so I'm going to ask the panel here to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do, and we're going to start over on my far right with Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm the Participant Development Coordinator for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society. My role involves looking after the professional and creative development of all the artists and professionals who come to the Fringe. That involves running what we call the Arts Industry Office, which is an office for all the programmers and industry professionals who are looking for work to take into their own festivals or venues after the Fringe, and running what we call the Fringe Central events programme, which is a series of workshops, seminars and discussions which are put on for all the artists who come to the Fringe to aid you in your professional development.
Thank you.
I am Rowan Campbell. I'm the General Manager of the Gilded Balloon, which is a fringe venue in Edinburgh. My role covers a huge range of activities, from assisting our artistic director with programming through to the financial contractual arrangements with performers, through to the setup of the building itself in terms of its technical specifications, the recruitment and the supervision of staff, and the relationship that we, the venue, have with the performers who are working in our space.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kath. I'm the Chief Executive of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society. So the Fringe Society is the organisation that exists to do three things. Firstly, and very much in this context, to support everyone who takes part in the Fringe. Secondly, to produce and provide accurate, up-to-date, comprehensive information and therefore ticketing to the public for the Fringe. And thirdly, to raise the profile and market the event very much in the context of Edinburgh and the other festivals in Scotland, throughout the rest of the UK and internationally.
I'm Rachel. I'm the Head of Participant Services, which basically means I oversee the department that deals with providing advice and support to anyone and everyone who wants to take part in the Fringe. And that involves pre-making the decision to take part, so providing advice while you're making that decision. When you've made the decision, while you're thinking about how to approach it, what to do while you're here in Edinburgh during August, and then afterwards, when you're going away.
Hello, I'm Mary Hetherington. I'm a producer of a production company called Fire Exit. We make the work of a playwright called David Leddy, and David and I, we produced all sorts of theatre arts events at the Fringe.
And thank you very much. And I guess our sixth guest is on the bottom right-hand side of your screen just now, and that's the Claire Canton, who will be interpreting this discussion for audience members who would like to access that service. I should also say that if you have questions, you don't have to just submit them using social media. There is a text box below the screen just now, so you can also submit your questions there, and we have a bunch of people at the back of the room just now moderating that, and they'll feed questions to us and we'll be able to ask them. So before we get into the real sort of nitty-gritty of the festival, I'm going to ask Kath if you would mind talking about the history of the festival very briefly and talking a little bit in more depth as to what the Fringe Society does as an organisation.
Yes, I will do that, thank you. So the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is the largest arts festival in the world, with over 3,000 different companies taking part. And we'll talk more about the scale of the Fringe and what that means. But I guess in order to understand the Fringe and what's important about it, it might be useful to give a bit of history. So the Fringe was formed in 1947 when the Edinburgh International Festival had been created deliberately in Edinburgh as a post-war initiative to bring together the people of war-torn Europe with this cultural celebration in this city, partly just because of luck, because it was still standing after the war, but it was described as a reflowering of the human spirit, which is a really wonderful thing. And in that year, in 1947, 8 companies, 6 of whom were from Scotland, decided that this was a great thing, that there was a new festival, great that it was in Edinburgh, perhaps less great that they hadn't been invited to take part. And so they decided that they wouldn't let that put them off, they would just bring their work. They realised there would be an attention on the city, and they would perform anyway. So I think what's really interesting is that all those years ago, the 3 things that I think are really key about the Fringe now and lead to its success were true all those years ago. So it happens in Edinburgh. The city itself is quite an important backdrop for the festival. It's an iconic, historic, beautiful city. It's also quite small and easy to walk around, and that's important. It's on the fringe of the International Festival, and that's still important. The term Fringe wasn't coined until some years later, but it happens alongside the International Festival and other festivals that are now happening in the city, and I think that combination of all the activity that's happening is really what sets Edinburgh apart. And then finally, and I guess most importantly, it's artist-led. Nobody decided it should happen. Some artists thought that they had something that was worth seeing, and they just decided to do it. And so it's an open access festival. The organisation that I run doesn't programme, it's not curating a programme, it's just supporting people who want to come. So, of course, now it's much bigger than it was years ago. It's grown ever since, but I think that idea that it's an open access, artist-led festival is what gives, I guess it gives a freedom of expression and a spontaneity which really sets the Fringe aside. Shall I talk more about the
I think maybe if you talk a little bit about the Fringe Society, there's, I guess we will go into a bit of depth in terms of the various roles that we play within the organisation, but I guess the overall strategy, what we do.
So after about 10 years, when it became apparent that the Fringe wasn't going anywhere, the Fringe Society was formed, again by the artists who had started the Fringe, to look after them, to realise that there would be some value in them working together, that if they produced a programme together, if they shared how they sold their tickets, that would be helpful, just to give themselves a support network. And I guess that's very much still what we're about today. We're a charity based in Scotland, registered in Scotland. We have a board of directors who are mostly elected from the membership. The membership is also open to anyone to join. And we now have a participants' council, which sits kind of, I guess, in between participants and the board, and is a sounding block and sounding board for to make sure that we are responding all the time to the needs of the artists and companies and producers who are taking part in the Fringe. I guess it's worth saying a bit more about what the Fringe is now.
Yes.
It's a very large open access festival. It has 3,000 different shows, as I said before, but it's also it's really something for everyone. It has all art forms, a lot of theatre, a lot of comedy, but lots of dance, physical theatre, circus, cabaret, spoken word, work for children, some visual art, really all sorts of art forms. It also has companies at all stages of their career, so some amateur student companies, some companies are doing it just because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing to do, but also real professional emerged companies and really well-known, famous, top-of-their-game artists and everything in between. So I think what all of these things are giving us at the Fringe is a real depth and diversity of experience for the audience. It takes place all day, every day, for at least 25 days in August. The first shows will start 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. They'll still be starting at midnight, 1 o'clock the next morning. And it happens, we'll talk more about venues, but it happens primarily in temporarily created venues, because the International Festival is still using most of the traditional year-round theatres in the city. The Fringe has had to adapt and literally now permeates and inhabits the whole city with just a huge variety of really wonderful temporarily created spaces.
Yeah. So I guess one of the really overwhelming things for people who are thinking about coming to Edinburgh for the first time during the Fringe is the scale of the festival. And I will talk to our guest panellists who don't actually work for the Fringe Society. In the next 10 minutes we'll probably come to you, but there are a few things that I guess we can offer as services to support, well, a lot of things we can offer as services to support your experience, but to make it less overwhelming for you, I'm going to ask Rachel to bullet point just the key stages, the things that you need to be considering. And then we'll revisit a few of them in a bit more depth, asking for the opinions and the experiences of our guests. So would you mind talking us through that? Thank you.
So I guess the first thing that we as the Fringe Society would urge you to do if you are considering or if you have decided to bring a show to the Fringe would be to go onto our website. It's a good test early on in the job, www.edfringe.com. And there's an enormous amount of resource on there, but one thing we would urge you to do is to sign up to our mailing list, which is a great place to get information, bulletins, and generally sort of keep in touch about all the stages of getting ready to come to Edinburgh. After you've signed up to the mailing list, you'll get access to all sorts of guides and resources that are downloadable there. The first big thing you'll be thinking about if you're bringing a show is where you're going to put that show on. And there's a lot of advice and support in the Fringe Society while you're making that decision. There is a downloadable guide called Guide to Choosing a Venue, which is a good place to start. There's a venue search mechanism on the website, and we've got plenty of advice and support within the office to help you think through that choice. And it's really important to say that it is your choice. We would let you have those direct negotiations with the venue managers about where you're going to go. But we really just urge you to do your research to really understand what it is you need out of a venue, to make sure you're having conversations about capacity, what time your performances might happen, where the venue is, make sure you understand that, understand the technical support you'll get in the venue. And we can help prompt you to ask all those questions, but we very much urge you to be having that conversation with several venues while you're making your decisions so that you get an informed perspective on where actually is going to be right for you and your show. Once you've found a venue and you definitely know you're coming to Edinburgh, the next stage is to register. And registration, there are various deadlines which are available on the website for registering your show with the Fringe Society, and what that does is ensure that you're within our printed programme, which I don't know if we have one here that we can wave, but is an amazing resource in terms of, as sort of mechanically demonstrated. But basically it's really important to make sure that you do register with us. It's the only time you'll be asked to give money directly to the Fringe Society, and the fees vary depending on how long you're coming for, how many shows you're doing, and whether you get in early. There's a discount for early registration, again, all available on the website, ranging from about £100 up to about £400. And after you've done your registration, the next sort of stage for you really is to be getting ready to actually come. So that's the point where you need to be thinking about where you're going to stay, accommodation, how you're going to get here, your travel, including the travel for your freight, your set, your fellow performers. It's a good point to start thinking about any media, any marketing activity you want to do around your show. And part of that process, I guess, is to think about why you're coming, which will dictate how you approach all those questions. And again, we've got people at the Fringe Society who can help you think through those issues. And I think we're talking a bit more about the actual services in a bit. Another point is if you're coming from another country, if you're an international visitor to the Fringe, it's worth bearing in mind that we can give you all sorts of advice around visas, immigration, foreign entertainers unit tax. Again, resources about that are on the website, but it is worth giving a bit of extra time to take those things into consideration, to think about them before you come. And the last thing, I guess, is to talk to us about what other opportunities there are for you while you're up here. So obviously your focus will be putting on your show, but I'm sure this discussion will cover some more of the opportunities available. But we have all sorts of things happening during August that you can take advantage of, and getting in touch with Robin, particularly about Fringe Central and the arts industry opportunities that are going on, would be something we'd urge you to do before you get here.
Thank you very much. So yes, that's in brief. That's how you do it. So you can tune out now if you want. So actually, it's worth pointing out that if you are on our website right now watching this, then you're watching it in the right area, in the participant section of edfringe.com. If you scroll down the page after this discussion, then all the downloadable guides are there. We'll divert you to them again right at the end of the discussion. And also remember that you can still be submitting questions using the hashtag AskEdFringe. Now, it's a massive festival. It's terrifying for a lot of people. Look at Rowan smiling. Why would people bother coming to Edinburgh, Rowan?
I think that they would bother coming to Edinburgh because, as Kath said, it's the largest arts festival in the world. So it gives you the opportunity to be seen by, the biggest audience in the world, potentially, the biggest variety of producers, promoters, other industry professionals. Also because, and obviously this is just my opinion, it's, the best, most fun festival in the world because it has that kind of hugely interestingly diverse kind of base in terms of the volume and variety of shows. So I think that there's there isn't one reason. There's many.
I think you're right. I think we as an organisation we want to get people to make informed decisions, and we always kind of play up the risk, if you like. We talk about here's how hard it's going to be, but it's great that you're talking right at the start about how brilliant it is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we all work for an organisation that we love because we love the festival and we love being in a festival city and everything that has to offer. As a producer for new work and work that is often restaged, what do you get out of bringing work to Edinburgh, and what does David get out of it?
I think for theatre companies, for artists, there's so many reasons, and for some of them it is to have a month-long debauched party. And for others, it's where else can you do a month-long run of your show and be engaging with audiences for that period of time? The act of discipline, that experience in itself. Also being positioned by so many of your peers, with other artists, you're able to have discussions about your work and see other work, and it's a massive professional development opportunity. It is really hard, but it's a massive marketplace. Robin has 1,000+ promoters register with her every year, and there are others as well who don't register, who do things on the sly. And and they come to see work, and maybe that's for a discussion, maybe that's an agent, maybe you're an actor looking for an agent, maybe you're a company looking to sell your work and book a UK tour or book work abroad. That's the marketplace. We've engaged with promoters throughout the UK that we would never have met otherwise, who would never have seen our work otherwise. We've engaged with national press that we may never have engaged with otherwise. I'm just thinking of good press right now, so I just had a little smile to myself. You're able to clock up. It's a great opportunity to get an award for new work, for work that's unpolished, that's maybe, not that our work is unpolished, our work is sublime, but others may. It's a great opportunity to get noticed and get marketing tools in that sense. So you're looking at reviews or being seen by lots of press, and again having those discussions and being able to use those to market your work, to sell on to promoters.
Thank you. And does that kind of mirror what you think, Robin, or do you have anything to add?
Absolutely. I think it's also a really nice place where you can find new collaborators and just see a huge range of work that you wouldn't normally maybe see. And that can be really nice as an artist for your own kind of professional development.
Yeah. And what sort of work Kath, do you think tends to work? I mean, I know there's no magic formula, but what do you see as the work that comes to Edinburgh and is successful? Is there anything they all share?
Yes. Obviously, I don't know what the perfect show to bring is. Nobody knows what the surefire hit is going to be. I think it's really important, as my colleagues were just talking about, I think it's important to understand why you're here, because that will inform what you bring. And what we're talking about is that there are three distinct audience types in Edinburgh. There's a large, loyal, risk-taking, up-for-it public audience. There's a media audience, international, again, large, diverse, looking for new, mostly. And then there's an industry audience who are looking to buy work or to find talent to work for. They're probably less interested in new. They're probably more interested in tried and tested. I think you can't second guess what they're going to want. I think the worst mistake that sometimes companies and artists make is to look at the year that went, look at what was successful that year, and then try to bring that the next year. A year will have passed. The Fringe is a very dynamic, ebullient, remarkably light on its feet festival for something that's so old and large, and because people are looking for new all the time, and people will say this is a theatre festival, or this year's a comedy festival, or this is about verbatim theatre, or this is about site specific. And if you try and second guess that or conform to that, then you won't. I don't think it will work. I think what will work is that you bring the thing that you really, really want to bring, the thing that you believe in, the thing that you think is good, the thing that you can't bear not to show to the audience.
And we will talk about that in terms of the investment of actually taking the work and what that means, and all the things that are positives in terms that Mary touched on, in terms of, oh wow, you get to do 25 shows back to back, where else do you get that?
That's a positive.
Yeah, that's a positive. But you also get to do 25 shows back to back, and you have to sell the hell out of it. You have to potentially bunk with your cast members and all those things as well. So it's all about.
But actually, if what you want is just the professional development opportunity of sitting with your work for 25 days in a space whilst taking advantage of seeing everything else that's around you, then it's less important. If you want to book a tour, then you have to have a piece of work that is tour ready. Yeah. If you want to get an award for new, then it has to be new, it has to be good. There's just, if you know why, then it's more likely you will be able to answer what, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's assume that people have gone away from watching this discussion and let it all digest and sink in, and then they've got their eureka moment where they realise what they're bringing. They need to get a venue. That's the next stage that we were talking about. So I wonder if what we'll do is I'll talk to Rowan with her venue hat on, but also in a generic sense in terms of if you could maybe talk through how you would approach venues, what the various deals are, and then I'll talk with Mary about how she secures venues and see if those correlate.
So, as Rachel said, so much information is on the Ed Fringe website, so that as a starting place is really important to go to, I think, because you need to first determine what it is that your particular production requires. What size of space, what type of room, what kind of technical support either you need your venue to supply or whether you're able to do it yourself. So it's all those kind of questions. What is your piece? And then once you've figured out what it is and what it is that you need and what it is that you don't need, then I think you're in a better position to look at venues. As you said, there was the kind of venue spec almost kind of system on the website where you can figure out who has what, and then ultimately you need to speak to each of those venues. The majority of venues will have their own website with as much information as they're able to give in advance on there. That information will break down all of the details with regards to the financial deals, which I'll talk about in a sec. It will break down the information about the venue spaces and the technical spec of those spaces, and also their application process. Some venues operate a simple hire process whereby you say, I would like that room on these days for this amount of money, thank you, and that's it. Some venues operate an application process whereby the artistic director or programmer then curates from the selection of applications. And there's probably some venues that do a combination of all of those things. So more likely than not, you have a sort of application or a hire process to go through. And then they will discuss with you the financial situation. Some venues that are hiring will simply tell you it costs X for X number of days. Some venues will operate on a kind of, it's not a hire in the same way, but it's either they will take a fixed amount of money from your box office sales or a percentage of that box office sales figure, depending on the greater. And some venues operate a system whereby there aren't any charges for the hire necessarily of the space, but you do need to pay some financial contributions to items such as brochure, entry, and then you don't necessarily make money in a sort of ticketed box office scenario. The audiences simply donate at the end. So there's so many variations within that.
There's a lot of information on our website, and
Yeah.
as you were saying, in the Fringe Guide to Choosing a Venue and using the venue search facility. There's also a massive resource within the Fringe Society. We are an impartial organisation. We will never say to you, this is where you should go. But what we will do is, this time last year, there were 340 venues on our system. That's the level of information that you had to wade through. So if you come to us by emailing participants@edfringe.com and you say, this is what I want to achieve out of the festival, this is what I'm looking for, this is my budget, this is the size of space, then we'll help do a fact-based shortlisting on it. So you might get a list of 50 venues rather than 350 from us. The more detailed you can be, the more power we have in funneling the direction in which you go. But ultimately, as we've all discussed and Rachel touched on, it's entirely up to you. Where you end up and what you do. We'll just help you get there and make effective decisions. Now, I wonder if you could talk about how you, because you've had a few within the festival. You've had a few different experiences, not just actually with David Leddy, but before you've produced work on the festival as well. How do you approach? Do you have any tips for approaching venues and? That took a long time to get that sentence out. We're going to cut that out.
Live.
Hi, could you tell me, do you have any tips on how you approach venues?
Yeah, sure, loads. I'll start with a map of Edinburgh and look at where the footfall is. Find out, if you don't know Edinburgh and you don't know the festival, find out where the footfall is. That will, the busiest areas will either be something you'll be drawn to or spurned away from. And generally with venues, it's about the programme. For me, it's always about the right fit. It's about how you can talk to the right audience, how you can get to the right audience. Being positioned in a venue as part of a programme that is artistically high quality and exciting is our number one priority, and appropriate is our number one priority, and it always is, and I think it always will be as a producer. It needs to meet all those things. And I think, and I could talk about individual venues, but in terms of theatre, it would be the Traverse, it would be Summer Hall, it would be Forest Fringe, if your work is like that, very exciting programmes of work. And then you need to look at things like, how can they support this production? What does this production need? Back to absolutely, what is the USP of your production? It's so hard to not know what your production is when you're talking to a venue, because if you don't know what you need, whether that's extraction and air conditioning or whether it's access requirements or a dressing room or a very, very long piece of set that must go somewhere.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe something. First of all, so I mean, we can on edfringe.com you can search by programming preference. So you can actually go who programs theatre, who programs dance, who programs physical theatre, who programs Romanian people on unicycles. You can't maybe get it. That's not really a genre, but you know, you can figure out where your work's going to best fit. But I guess one of the real considerations is there was a bit of an urban legend that you show up at Edinburgh and technically you have nothing. You know, you might show up and there will be like a man with a torch at the back of the room. Do you want to talk a little bit, Rowan, about what you can expect from venues technically in terms of the support you'll get?
Again, that's very, very different, I think, across different venues. Some venue spaces will be sort of fairly fully equipped with sound, light, prepared kind of black box style so that you can then kind of imprint upon them. Some spaces will be nothing. This is a room in a pub and on you go. And some will be somewhere in the middle of that where there are basic technical maybe some lights, maybe an element of sound that you would need to then add to with your own equipment, either owned or hired. Some venues have a full complement of technical staff who can assist you with the sort of running of your show. They can operate your show for you. Some venues do not, and you will need to bring your own member of staff to do that, and some venues will have something in the middle where they do a bit but not at all. So that's probably not a great answer.
No, it's
all everything.
It is everything.
All the options.
Yeah.
I think in terms of what you expect, you should neither expect that it won't be available or assume that it will. All things are possible. Some venues, although they're temporarily created, are absolutely state-of-the-art in terms of their technical facilities. But if you assume there's a piano and a DI box and a lift and a air conditioning, and then why would you assume that? You need to. It's all a conversation with the venue. You need to. If there are things that you definitely require, you have to make sure that they're there. If they're not there and you're going to bring them, you have to make sure you're allowed to bring them. Not all venues will allow you to bring equipment in. And then you have to be also sure if a venue is going to provide you something, are you going to have to pay for it? Do you know how much it is? Is that included in the hire? Is that additional? So you're absolutely right. There's no right or wrong answer to any of that, but I think you can't expect or assume anything about it.
And that's across the board
way.
in terms of your venue agreement that you come up with. You should have all that stuff discussed before you're signing your contract and paying deposits if there are deposits to be paid or rentals to be paid in full. That's not just technical stuff, it's what's the marketing support? Is there a charge for the PR within the organisation? Is there anything else that we're not aware of? Do we have to pay for parking? So I think, we're talking kind of money just now. It's one of those things, there's no real answer, but I'm going to ask Robin to talk a little bit about how you finance presenting work in Edinburgh.
So I guess being creative in your thinking about how you find money is always going to be an advantage when you're thinking about Edinburgh. There are some funding streams available, and we've got a lovely section on our website which lists those called funding opportunities as and when they become available. More often than not, though, companies will be self-funding themselves using platforms such as crowdfunding or sponsorship or using their own resources as well. So it can be a challenge. Edinburgh it's expensive. It's an expensive city year-round, and during the Fringe it can become even more expensive. Accommodation and food and booze. The costs mount up. Just thinking a little bit out of the box about how you find money is going to be to your advantage, and maybe remembering that Edinburgh is a city. So if you have a set that requires 15 chairs, maybe don't hire a van to drive those chairs up. Maybe just nip out to IKEA and buy them. That's probably going to be cheaper.
Or any other store.
Other stores, available. Generic shop.
But yeah, I mean, I guess there are definite like areas in this discussion where we could spend hours talking about them and coming up with ideas. And I think that's probably enough to direct people to that section of the website. There are some regional funding streams that are available some years they're not. If you're creating work in Scotland, then there's the Made in Scotland fund that application's closed for now this year. But certainly there are various things that pop up as and when. But certainly most of the emerging companies that are coming to Edinburgh that we are dealing with directly have all done that thing, the Kickstarter, the bake sale, the gala at home, the asking people to donate their air miles or whatever. Yeah. So there are lots of ways around it. And another subject that I want to touch on and get opinions from everyone, but again, it's such a massive deal and so important to the Fringe experience is that we do separate sessions, and that's on selling your work on the Fringe, because once you're here, you've got your space, you have to get bums on seats. I mean, there's no point being here, even if you are just here for the jolly. It's not really that much fun if there's 3 people in the audience, unless you're doing an immersive piece that only has an audience of 3. Sold out. Can I just, on edfringe.com, the Fringe Guide to Selling a Show is a document that you should download, you should read from front to back, and then you should pass to everyone else in your company and read from front to back as well. It's got case studies, it's got ideas, it's got really basic guidelines like this is how you write a news release, and you'd be surprised that it's not really the same way as it was when you learned about it the first time in the 90s. Things change and approaches are different.
So everyone is as old as us.
Yeah, well, yes, okay. Right. So let's talk a little bit about marketing tips. Kath?
I think, as with all of these questions, there are a myriad of different answers, and as you say, lots of tips online. I think the most important thing about marketing is that if you expect anyone to turn up from any of the 3 audiences that are available, you will have to do some marketing, and you can do it yourself, you can pay people to do it, you can get your company to do it, you can do all of those things, but if you don't do it and you don't keep at it from once you're here throughout the run until the end, it's unlikely that people are just going to find your show. It's a very, very competitive environment, over 3,000 different companies, different pieces of work. So if you don't tell people about you, do something to raise your head above the parapet, I guess, then people won't come. But there are so many different ways. I mean, the panellists here will have different ideas, but it's really about thinking, again, back to what Mary was saying, it's about thinking about what your show is and what's special about it and how are you going to sell that. How would you convince somebody to come and see your show if you can do that? And you don't need to wait till you're in Edinburgh. If you're doing previews or you're doing fundraisers, start thinking about it then. How are you going to convince somebody to come to your show instead of one of the other 3,000 shows? Is that the image? Is that the copy? Is that the news release? Is it all those things?
It's definitely not one of those things.
I'm quite keen to hear your perspective on this, Rachel, as someone who's been responsible for, in your past life, I've been responsible for working with international artists coming to Edinburgh and presenting work here. Is there anything that you can advise for people who don't have someone on the ground here in the run-up to the festival?
I mean, I think the sort of key thing, I think, around that is that when you're thinking about why you're bringing a show to the Fringe, when you're thinking through that, the marketing and the media is a very prominent reason for why you want to bring the work. Make that a very prominent part of your budgeting for the process of deciding to come. And don't, as Kath said, just sort of wait till you get here and then think, well, actually, we've got the show, it's really brilliant, we're very proud of it. Our performers are all here and very happy and well housed, but actually haven't thought about how to tell anyone about it. I would build that right to the beginning when you're making your decision to come, build in how you're going to tell people about it. Seems like a long way away, but it will come crashingly up in front of you as soon as you arrive and you're sitting there on your first or second day of shows. And I think thinking about who your audience member is, so in terms of the international shows that I've kind of, I guess, indirectly worked with in the past, thinking about the journey for an audience member, how they're going to find you, how you might work with other shows who are doing something similar, perhaps, to signpost, because often people are here for a little while, and think about who else they might be going to see that could actually be something that might relate to what you're doing. If they're seeing something similar and liking it, could you flyer or get an arrangement going with those people, or think about a reciprocal signposting arrangement that gives you a little bit more profile and potential to access the audiences you actually think will enjoy your show, because there are so many people here and not everyone will. But if you can actually identify who your ideal audience member is and think about how you're going to reach that person on the street when you're up here in Edinburgh, I think that would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Great, and I think that's probably enough in terms of that. If you are really keen to get into this, you can actually download the podcasts from last year's discussions, how to do it, how to sell a show at the Fringe from either London or from Brighton. And there's also some downloadable arts industry chats as well that Robin has chaired. So there's just so much information. You could just hole yourself up for the weekend and immerse yourself in the website. So we're going to take questions in a couple of moments. We're going to harvest them, or someone's already harvesting them, and they're going to pass them over to us. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Robin if she would mind chatting through the various aspects of networking when you're in Edinburgh, but also talk about Fringe Central and what that is, because I think that's an incredible resource. It's not really arrogant. We work for an organisation that does provide an incredible resource. So would you like to talk through that, please?
Cool. So networking, yes. I mean, the whole of Edinburgh, the whole of the Fringe becomes a networking opportunity. You have no idea who you're standing in the queue next to at times. So my advice would be to talk to everyone, make friends, have fun, be nice to people, and they'll be nice to you back. In terms of formal networking, we do some kind of formal events that help you to meet people. So we have arts industry networking brunches, where you can meet programmers and producers who are in the Fringe specifically looking for work. We have a great big Meet the Media event, which is held on the first Saturday of the Fringe, which is crazy. It's basically a big event where we have lots of publications and lots of media outlets who come, and you get essentially 2 minutes to pitch your work to them to try and encourage them to come along and review your show. And that can be great because there's lots of other artists there as well, so you can talk to them as well. Lots of other external organisations put on networking events, and we try and collate all that information and have it available to you if you want that information. But basically, just come and speak to the Fringe Society, come and speak to Barry, to Rachel, to myself, as soon as you can. Email us, find out what you can do to be preparing your strategy and getting yourself out there, and we can help you do that as far in advance as possible. Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions.
And a cheeky look on your face.
I think they've censored the root questions, to be honest. Let's just see how I should prioritise these. There are a few ones that we can answer very quickly. First of all, is the Free Fringe a completely separate festival or part of Ed Fringe?
Part of Ed Fringe, or at least in part of. There are several free models. The Free Fringe is one of them, and in the most part, those shows are part of Ed Fringe.
Okay. Are there technical, show-related job opportunities on offer in August, and how do you connect with them?
Before August.
In August?
Yeah.
Or you connect with them before August?
Yes.
Okay. Edfringe.com actually has a job opportunities section, and some venues advertise those opportunities through us. Otherwise, it's about keeping an eye out and stuff.
Creative Scotland opportunities site is good for that as well. Go to Creative Scotland and link to opportunities. They've got good listings on there for stuff that comes up.
Okay. Any specific advice or experience for family or kids music performers? So I'm assuming shows that have young performers in them. Robin?
Be prepared. I mean, if you're working with a very young cast, you'll need to prepare them for the amount of hard work that the Fringe will actually be, Yeah.
And I guess it doesn't really say where this question's come from. If you're concerned about sort of work regulations and stuff, then the way it's implemented in Edinburgh is certainly that children performing, you go by the regulations and the local authority that the child goes to school in. So you should be looking at whether that's like no more than 4 performances a week or however many. That's the way you go there. Also get really good insurance because kids break things.
Including themselves.
I would actually say I think there's a whole other level of preparation, I guess, if you're working with a young cast. But I think actually the advice is quite good for everyone. If you're bringing a cast at all, if your company is more than just you, then make sure everybody who's coming knows what you're getting them into.
Yeah.
You know, how much work they're going to have to do, where they're going to stay, what's their venue like, what are the expectations.
And also, I guess something that we experienced last year, make sure your promotion lets people know that it's a school's performance or a young person's performance and stuff, because audiences might not be happy if they're showing up to something that they're expecting. It depends what the work is, but you know, if you're showing up to a musical and you're not advertising that it's a young person's performance, you might be expecting an adult professional cast, for example, even though it might be a young person's professional cast. There are variations there.
Or they might be looking for
absolutely.
by young people. So that's all just back to marketing.
And there's definitely
you're clear about what
there's definitely a market for that as well. We were chatting about this last week in terms of lots of youth groups and schools, particularly from overseas, actually come to Edinburgh, and maybe it's to do with term time, where it makes it a bit easier for them. But you know, they keep coming, and so I'm assuming that there is a market for it. Okay, I'm really struggling to find accommodation for my cast. Could you give me advice?
Yes.
Just you need to start looking as early as humanly possible. It's kind of alarming if you say you're already struggling.
But also don't panic if it feels like there's not very much out there, because more will become available, and we have a listing on edfringe.com as we hear about things becoming available that you can go and have a look at. So don't worry, what's out there at the moment is not the sum total of everything that will be available for next August, but good to be thinking about it, but don't panic.
I let my flat out for the Fringe, and I wouldn't be accepting any inquiries at this point.
No.
It still is quite early. You know,
but
people
it's
will
good to research what the options are, I think, and talk to other companies potentially who've come up and what option they chose, because as Barry mentioned, you can end up with 8 cast members in one flat, or you could think about student halls accommodation, or there are lots of different options. So thinking through what those are now, but not necessarily panicking if you're not able to book them yet.
Okay, here's one that's maybe not as quick to answer. Could you please give some information about support for international artists with disabilities?
You should answer that.
Yes. So yes, I can answer this. We are, as an organisation, we're currently we're always striving to make the festival as accessible as possible. The first thing that you should do is you should email me directly, barry@edfringe.com. That's my email address, or participants@edfringe.com. That's probably the best route for you to start getting a bit more bespoke information. I can't really answer you right now and say, you know, I'd need to know what your access needs are. Venues have been incredible for the last 5 years. Way before that as well, but since we've really started making gains on the information that we gather because of our new database and stuff, we have so many pieces of advice, so many pieces of information on the accessibility of getting into venues, but also as a performer, how those spaces work, the training that's offered to staff. There's definitely really good, strong goodwill going on in Edinburgh just now to make this city as accessible as possible. The reality is Edinburgh is an ancient city. It's filled with cobbled streets at incredible gradients, so it's not necessarily the easiest city to navigate, but there are routes around it and there is support there. We are constantly working on making sure that information that we hold is current and accurate as possible. There are also other agencies in Scotland that are working towards these things. So there are people that we can put you in touch with. The Federation of Scottish Theatre certainly has incredible routes to to information and support services as well.
I was going to say Robert Softly Gale's piece last year, If These Spasms Could Speak, was incredible. Robert's a wheelchair user and very, very funny, cheeky man. And I'm on all sorts of awards, and he was at the Pleasance, so it might be worth speaking to them. And he runs a company with Mary Taylor called Flip Artists, who you can find on Twitter and online, I presume. And they specialise in providing supports.
And there are also lots of resources out there as well that you can just access. There are things that are emerging just now. Ewan's Guide is a really great website that talks about accessibility in various spaces. Majority of that information is physical accessibility, but certainly it seems to be getting busier and busier and so on.
But you could provide all of that.
Yeah,
Email
absolutely. We just email me. Okay. How does one attract sponsors?
I think you do that in the way that you would attract a sponsor for anything. I think in terms of your preparation, again, it's about how are you selling your work? What are you doing? What about that work would be interesting to a sponsor? Try and think of it from their perspective, not yours. And I think it's more important to think about that where you are now rather than Edinburgh. I wouldn't think about who in Edinburgh or Scotland, if you're not here, is going to sponsor you. I think about where you live can help, and is that big sponsorship? That would be lovely. If so, what are they going to be able to get in return, or is it lots of little bits of small sponsorship, which actually might help? Is it in kind? Is there a printer that can help you? Is there you mentioned about air miles or travel, or but I think about that now and think about it where you are rather than from a Scottish Edinburgh perspective, but think about what they're going to get. Why would they do it? I think the mistake that people make with sponsorship is thinking, well, what am I going to get out? What do I need? Think, what could they have?
And as a venue, Rowan, what are your concerns in terms of the sponsorship that companies that are presenting work in your venue bring?
It depends quite often on what sponsor a venue itself has, whether or not there's going to be any conflicts. So, for example, if your venue has an alcohol sponsor, it may not be possible for you then to bring on another alcohol sponsor because there's going to be an inevitable conflict, and your venue, in all likelihood, will have a clause in its contract to say, good luck getting some sponsorship, but you need to let us know so that we can check that it doesn't conflict with ours. I think that, as Kath said, it's about thinking about it completely from the flip side, rather than we've got this fabulous thing, you should want it. It's absolutely about what could you possibly give to this sponsor that is going to be beneficial to them. And your venue, some venues are maybe going to have issues with certain things, but other venues will be very fluid and flexible. But again, that's a conversation if that is something that you're looking for, and therefore your ability to come to Edinburgh depends upon. Start that conversation early during your negotiation with a venue. Don't suddenly surprise them with, we've got 20 grand from this, and then make your venue tell you can't have that, because that's just heartbreaking.
Because you would always be trying to accommodate a company. You would always be trying to help a company if they had something. But your ability to do that is going to be diminished the closer you get to opening day.
Absolutely. And the more money that a performer is able to bring to their own kind of pot in quite a cold way, the better it's going to be for them, but it's also going to be better for us, because the likelihood is that they will be able to commit to greater marketing spend. Their cast might be able to eat 3 meals a day instead of 2. So, we're never going to be like just jealous of your money.
Barocca's expensive, right? Robin.
I was just going to say that there is another guide on our website about fundraising, that gives some tips about how to engage with sponsors and how to write a proposal. And there are lots of cultural organisations all over the UK and internationally, I'm sure, as well, who will give you help and advice with that, such as...
Okay, we have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
So I'll do some of these quickly. Is it okay to do the same show 2 years in a row?
I've done that.
Sometimes.
But is it okay?
Yeah, it was okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
Right, can I do 2 shows in the same year, and would you recommend that for a first timer?
I think you need to think about why you're doing that. The Fringe is manic and stressful, and if you've never done it before, then maybe bringing 2 shows might be a little bit too much in your first year. However, that depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, if you're a mature company with 2 pieces that you're very comfortable with, very familiar with, it's a good company that works well together, it's probably fine. If it's a new company and both pieces of work are new, it's probably too much.
Just research Ed Fringe and make sure that you know what you're getting into, because it's really different from anything else.
Okay, for a small company without budget to support a full run, is there a best time to come if you're only coming for a week or so?
The end. The end is the best time, because that's when all the promoters come. That's when there's been a great build-up. I would say that's the most exciting time to be at the festival, and you can come in all peppy and full of enthusiasm while everyone is half dead around
And
you.
actually, this kind of complements that last question. Any advice about promotion on a tight budget, specific to the fact that the international festival will be running over the same dates as the festival this year?
I think the promotion is the same no matter when you're coming. If you think the last week is when you're coming, don't not do any promotion until the last week. You know, that's true if you're only coming the first week, don't wait till the first week. You need to be thinking about that, as Rachel said, right from the beginning. You need to be promoting your show, and you need to be doing it from the minute you decided that you're coming. And you need to be competing with the other Fringe companies as well as the festival. The international festival dates will be exactly the same this year. We've always overlapped with them, so it's not a brand new thing. It's just about thinking again, who are you trying to get in front of, and how are you going to do that?
Great. This is a very specific question. Has anything changed in 354 years of theatre? Are still there fewer opportunities for women in theatre than there are for men?
Wow.
Robin.
I know, right?
I'm still disappointed you didn't dress as the Spice Girl.
Better notice, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
So we actually did an event in Fringe Central this year called Women in the Fringe, and it was looking at what opportunities are available at the Fringe. And actually the kind of general feeling amongst the panellists and the audience members that came was that the Fringe is actually quite a nice environment for women, because you can fully take charge of what you're doing. You don't have to rely on other people, essentially. There's still all the difficulties that exist with normal life, and you know, you shouldn't expect it all to be lovely and rosy, but it's generally a really nice environment.
Okay, I promised I would finish on time. We have 3 minutes, and I want one final piece of great advice from each of you, starting with Mary. It doesn't have to be, no, it does have to be about the Fringe.
Yeah, okay. Don't do it on your own. Make sure you're well supported. Even if you're coming on your own, find other people who are in the same situation and get together with them, share resources, share stories, and make sure you can get a hug off someone every day. Also wear comfortable shoes, light layers,
One piece of advice. Rachel.
Go and see lots of work as well as presenting your own.
Kath.
Have a great time and look after yourself, and be nice to people. If you're nice to people, they'll be nice to you.
Vegetables.
Oh, it's going to be
Eat
mine.
vegetables. Drink in moderation, but do all of the things that everyone else has said. Participate, take part. Don't just do your show and leave at the end of the day.
Come to the events in Fringe Central and speak to us and have a great Fringe.
I've got another piece of advice.
Okay.
edfringe.com/participants.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much. They say in Edinburgh that time is a gift because everyone's always needing to be in 3 different places at one time, so I'm going to gift you 1 minute. I would like to thank everyone who's participated this evening, our guests who have given up their evenings. They've come out of work and everyone's, in the winter, it's a bit, everyone's a little bit ill. So it's much appreciated that people come out. I would also like to extend a very special thanks to Claire Canton and Marion Fletcher, who have provided our interpretation service for this evening. Inner Ear, who have made it all possible for us to be here and to be sharing our thoughts with you. And Team Ed Fringe up the back, Kevin, Colin and Vanessa, who have been manning all the boards and the social media. We would also like to finish by thanking Creative Scotland, the Scottish Government and Edinburgh City Council for their continued support and all the work that we do. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you in Edinburgh.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Yes, thank you, Barry.
Thank you.